So every so often, I like to keep track of the events that are happening on the Latin American right, because if you are not aware, I speak Spanish and grew up speaking Spanish in my home as my first language. A lot of people can't actually tell that, but having access to another language and also being somebody who's interested in political philosophy goes a long way, because then you can gain insight into how your ideas are being implemented internationally. And because I am a right-wing Catholic conservative, I can take a look at how world leaders who share my ideology or ideologies adjacent to mine, so like, right-wing libertarianism, things like that, I can take a look at how they're implementing things and how those leaders conduct themselves. And that brings me to the subject of this video, which is the president of Argentina, Javier Milei. He's kind of like a Trump-esque figure in the sense that when he was elected, people didn't really think that he would be elected because of some of the antics that he was doing. He was pretty entertaining, but also his ideas are really good, and he can be serious when he wants to be, as noted by what I'm about to show you guys. So he was invited to the World Economic Forum, which is a forum of globalist, leftist, sort of elite people. And I'm surprised that he was allowed to speak here because, well, he's a right-winger. He's operates very much outside of the left-wing paradigm in pretty much every aspect. He's a right-wing libertarian with an idea that government should be as small as possible and should only protect life, liberty, and property rights. So he's fundamentally at odds with the philosophy of all the people who host this forum, but because his economics are actually working and lifting up Argentina, he was invited to speak here, and I am glad that he did, because the speech that he gave took a sledgehammer to the leftist paradigm and proposed his own. I mean, he just spent 30 minutes eviscerating the whole paradigm. He went at feminism, he went at environmentalism, gender ideology, all kinds of stuff. Now, I'm going to play a brief snippet because I'm obviously not going to play the full 30 minutes, but I understand that the title of this video is a little bit, bold, but when you hear this speech, because it was given in Spanish, but luckily for you guys, there was an interpreter there who was present, who was keeping up decently well, although he did struggle at times. And so you will be able to understand every last word that he is saying. And then you will understand why I call him the terror of leftists. So let's go ahead. Let's not waste any more time.
In summary, we invented capitalism on the basis of saving, investment, labor and reinvestment, and hard work. We got every worker to multiply tenfold, 100-fold, or why not even 1,000-fold their productivity, thus overcoming the Malthusian trap. Yet at some point in the 20th century, we lost our way, and the liberal principles that had made us free and prosperous were betrayed. A new political class, driven by collectivist ideologies and taking advantage of times of crisis, saw the perfect opportunity to accumulate power. All the wealth created by capitalism until then and into the future would be redistributed through some scheme of centralized planning, setting in motion a process whose disastrous consequences we are suffering today. By promoting a socialist agenda, while insidiously operating within the liberal paradigm, this new political class distorted the values of liberalism. And so they replaced freedom with liberation, using the coercive power of the state to redistribute the wealth created by capitalism. Their justification was the sinister, unjust, and abhorrent idea of social justice, complemented by theoretical Marxist frameworks aimed at liberating individuals from their needs. And at the core of this new value system lies the fundamental premise that equality before the law is not enough, as hidden systemic injustices exist which must be rectified. An idea that serves as a goldmine for bureaucrats who aspire to omnipotence. And this is fundamentally what wokeism is about, the result of the reversal of Western values. Each of our civilization's pillars has been replaced by a distorted version of itself through various mechanisms of cultural subversion. Negative rights to life, liberty, and property were transformed into an artificial and endless list of positive rights. First it was education, then housing, and from then on absurdities like access to the internet, televised football, theater, cosmetic treatments, and an endless number of other desires that were turned into fundamental human rights. Rights that, of course, someone has to pay for, and which can only be guaranteed through the infinite expansion of the abhorrent state. In other words, we move from the concept of freedom as the fundamental protection of the individual against the intervention of the tyrant to the concept of liberation through state intervention. On this foundation, wokeism was built, an ideology of monolithic thinking upheld by various institutions, whose purpose is to penalize dissent. Feminism, diversity, inclusion, equity, immigration, abortion, environmentalism, gender ideology, among others. These are all various heads of the same beast, aimed at justifying the state's expansion through the appropriation and distortion of noble causes. Let us look at some of these. Radical feminism is a distortion of the concept of equality. Even in its most benevolent form, it is redundant, as equality before the law already exists in the West. Everything else is a quest for privileges, which is what radical feminism truly seeks, pitting half of the population against the other half, when they should both be on the same side. We have even got to the point of normalizing the fact that in many supposedly civilized countries, if you kill a woman, it is called femicide, and this carries more serious punishment than if you kill a man, simply based on the sex of the victim, legally making a woman's life be worth more than that of a man. And that they carry the banner of the gender-based wage gap, but when you look at the data, it is clear that there is no inequality for the same work, but rather that most men tend to choose better-paying professions than most women. However, they don't complain about the fact that most prison inmates are men, or that most plumbers are men, or that most victims of robbery or murder are men, let alone the majority of people who have died in wars. But if you raise these points in the media, or even at this forum, you're considered a misogynist, simply for defending an elementary principle of modern democracy and the rule of law, which is equality before the law, and of course defending the data as well. Wokeism also manifests in sinister radical environmentalism and the climate change agenda. Preserving our planet for future generations is a matter of common sense. No one wants to live in a landfill. But once again, wokeism has managed to pervert this fundamental idea. From preserving the environment for human enjoyment, we have shifted to a fanatical environmentalism, where we humans are seen as a cancer that must be eradicated, and economic development is considered little more than a crime against nature. And yet, when we argue that the Earth has already gone through 5 abrupt temperature change cycles and that during 4 of those man was not even around, we are called flat earthers in order to discredit our ideas, even though science and the data are on our side. It is no coincidence that these same groups are the main promoters of the bloody, murderous abortion agenda, an agenda designed on the basis of the Malthusian premise that overpopulation will destroy the earth, and that we must therefore implement some form of population control. In fact, this has been carried to such an extreme that today on Earth we start to see a population growth rate starting to look like a problem and talk about a job they've done by promoting abortion. And these forums promote the LGBT agenda, attempting to impose the idea that women are men and men are women simply based on self-perception. And they say nothing about when a man dresses as a woman and kills his opponent in a boxing ring, or when a male prison inmate claims to be a woman and ends up sexually assaulting women in prison. In fact, just a few weeks ago, there were headlines around the world regarding the case of two gay Americans who championed the banners of sexual diversity and were sentenced to 100 years in prison for abusing and filming their adopted children for more than 2 years. I want to be clear. When I say abuse, this is no euphemism, because in its most extreme forms, gender ideology is outright child abuse. They are pedophiles.
So, as you can see, as you could hear, it's very, very surprising that they allowed him to be there with, obviously factual. He's saying things that are true, but he's saying things that normally people don't want to hear when they are of the opposite political persuasion of him. But I think the fact that he was allowed to speak kind of signals, and he obviously is going to allude to this later on if you go and watch this, which I encourage you to listen to this whole thing because it's well worth your time. He alludes to the fact that there's a paradigm shift going on with the election of Trump, with the election of Milei himself, with the election of other right-wing leaders in other countries. We're getting sick of the woke paradigm, and we are finally having people calling it out, saying what it is, and just speaking truth about a system that has failed, which I don't think anybody should be ever prevented from doing. And that's why I call him the terror of leftists, because the way that he is carrying himself, not just in this speech, but in the way that he approaches these kinds of issues, he is precise, he's straight to the point, and he gives all these guys a run for his money. I'm going to play a little bit more for you guys, and end the video with a remark from him, because I have very little commentary to give. This speaks for itself, and I think that I should not impede on that.
Didn't the bureaucrats in Brussels suspend Romania's elections simply because they didn't like the party that had won? Faced with each of these discussions, wokeism's first strategy is to discredit those of us who challenge these things. First by labeling us, and then by silencing us. If you're white, you must be racist. If you're a man, you must be a misogynist or part of the patriarchy. If you're rich, you must be a cruel capitalist. If you're heterosexual, you must be heteronormative, homophobic, or transphobic. For every challenge, they have a label, and then they try to suppress you by force or through legal means. Because beneath the rhetoric of diversity, democracy, and tolerance that they so often preach, what truly lies is their blatant desire to eliminate dissent, criticism, and ultimately freedom, so they can continue to uphold a model in which they are the main beneficiaries.
And that is exactly correct, which is what we're getting sick of, and there are now voices rising up in every direction, internationally, globally, that are denouncing this. So that's a good spot to end this video. Again, I encourage you to watch this on your own time, because he makes a lot of good points. He ends this by saying that there's going to be a paradigm shift, which I don't know about you, but I'm going to be part of that paradigm shift, because he is spitting truth. He is telling it how it is, and I am glad that he had the opportunity to do this, and I hope that this signals that free speech is making a return. And if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe. We cover politics, we cover religion, theology, and the like. So if that sounds of interest to you, then support this channel in whatever way possible. Leave a comment. If you disagree with us and our ideas, we are always open to dialogue. But yeah, that's all for now, everybody. God bless.